If you aren't a complete loser like me, you might not know that unlike the Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC's attempt to do the same thing has been unique, to say the least. Think about the difference between 10 years at Marvel versus 10 years at DC. It's easy to say, I'm not sad about saying goodbye to this era of DC movies, and I'm excited to see the more cohesive vision coming from Gunn and Safran. That said, I kinda do like a lot of these movies, and I think even the bad ones have some of the most fascinating reasons as to why they went wrong. So this video is going to tell the story, the DCEU story. I'm going to talk about the things I liked, the things I didn't, and the history of why some of those things went that way. Oh, and for fun, I'll throw them all into a ranking at the end. So let me take you all the way back to a distant time called... Remember that Dark Knight movie that everybody liked and made a bunch of money? Well, DC certainly remembered it, and they said, hold on, somewhere in here we have another character, and he's kinda like Batman. Let's just make another one of those. And let's hire visionary director Zack Snyder and have Christopher Nolan produce to trick people into thinking it's the same universe as the Dark Knight trilogy. All things considered, this is probably the DCEU movie with the smoothest backstory. There's no Man of Steel director's cut, no crazy reshoots and rewrites, production behind the film was pretty smooth. And it was a relatively large success, grossing almost $700 million. Audiences didn't love the movie. They didn't hate it, mostly they thought it was okay. But across the board, most people did like Henry Cavill as Superman and Michael Shannon's Zod. Plus, even today, most people admit that it does look pretty good, and there's some great stuff in there. As far as what I think of the movie, I absolutely loved it when it came out when I was like 13, and I don't really like it now, but I do respect it. I'm grateful that they took big swings, tried changing the character up, tried new things, even if those things didn't work out for me. As we'll soon learn, the worst movies in this universe are the ones that try to appeal to everybody and end up pleasing nobody. Snyder fans like this movie a lot. I think it's pretty okay. Like I said, it's visually pretty awesome, the score is incredible, Michael Shannon is a fantastic villain. There's a lot of great stuff in here, but ultimately it falls flat as an adaptation of the greatest superhero of all time, in my opinion. The de-emphasis on the Daily Planet, weak characterization of Lois Lane, and the fact that Superman does this, and this, and this, prevent me from liking it all that much. I will die on the hill that the way Jonathan Kent died was ridiculously stupid, and there's just no defense for it. But honestly, with a few tweaks, there was nothing in this movie that couldn't be fixed. I'm sure if they just made a direct sequel to this to flesh out the character of Superman, more audiences could end up really liking him.
What could possibly go wrong?
Hey, remember that thing I said about the movie itself not being that bad, but the issue was the characterization of the title hero? Remember that? Yeah. The year is 2013. San Diego Comic-Con. Warner Brothers announces the return of Zack Snyder for a sequel to Man of Steel, where Batman and Superman will meet on the big screen for the first time. The crowd goes nuts. They show a really fat bat logo so that the Superman S can fit into it. They say it'll be based on The Dark Knight Returns. They play a clip of narration from the graphic novel. Let me tell you, 13-year-old me went fucking nuts when this was announced. Batman and Superman teaming up. How can that not be amazing? I was texting my dad frantically. This is what I'd been waiting my whole life for. The Avengers were nothing in comparison to this. Before we get to that, I gotta talk about how the build-up to this movie was a roller coaster. Once the casting started, we had endless clickbait articles about how the movie was doomed. Remember Daredevil? What are they thinking casting Ben Affleck? Gal Gadot is a model, not an actress. And she's gonna be Wonder Woman? Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor? You mean the Facebook guy? Safe to say, the general public wasn't exactly open-minded about a lot of the casting. Everything up to the release of this movie was a roller coaster of speculation. And honestly, all the trailers and everything made this movie look incredible. And then it hit. The movie itself, I mean. And look, there have been a fucking shit ton of think pieces and videos longer than my lifespan about this movie, so I really won't go that far into what I think of it personally. Here's my spark notes. Batman shouldn't be killing people. It wrecks the whole movie, especially since he doesn't stop killing after the big punch-up. It visually kind of rocks. I actually dig most of this movie up until the third act when shit just falls off the rails. And that is in no small part due to Doomsday. I hate the way Superman is portrayed here. He barely says anything, and he isn't likable. The score rocks, especially the red capes are coming. Overall, I didn't like this movie that much when I saw it. The Ultimate Edition that Snyder released did help considerably with a lot of the things I have problems with, and I still maintain that DC could have salvaged a decent universe out of this without a massive course correction. Not yet! This movie just did so much, and wasn't good enough at any of them to distract from what it was really not good at. Somewhere in here is a good movie. Beneath the cameo emails and jars of piss is a decent punch-up movie between the two most iconic characters of all time. Now, the reception of this movie was obviously not great. It still made a decent amount of money though, and I think having the words Batman and Superman in the title probably helped with that. This movie started the Snyder cult in full force. It started the trend of lunatics on the internet demanding director's cut and saying that people were not smart enough to understand the movie, which, in addition to DC's constant course correction, is a big reason that nobody got what they wanted from this franchise. But I promise, we will get to that later. Fuck! God, this movie fucking sucks. This is easily one of the worst goddamn superhero movies of all time. There is not enough time in the day to explain everything that went wrong here. Okay, before I get there, I guess I should explain what exactly happened here. For some reason, DC decided that the best movie to follow up their massive team-up movie was a movie about a group of unknown characters, so they greenlit Suicide Squad. What followed was actually a lot of really good casting news. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, Will Smith as Deadshot, Katana, El Diablo. Pretty good squad we got shaping up here, guys. Wait, what does that say?
Jared Leto?
Well, okay, I could see that. He's a bit of a freak, bit of a weirdo. What the fuck is that? Now, reminder. I was in my copium era when this movie was being made, so I was a pretty harsh defender of everything associated with this movie and DC in general. Plus, this was the first DCEU movie not done by Snyder, so I think people were hopeful for a change in the style. Oh, and boy did they get one. Throw in a couple really good trailers, and it's safe to say people were pretty excited for this one. And then the movie came out.
Y'all jokers must be crazy.
Normals is setting on the dryer.
I lost one family, I ain't gonna lose another one.
What the hell happened? Alright, well, we all know that DC took a cartoonishly large pair of scissors to the movie in order to make it more like Guardians of the Galaxy, and it didn't work. The director David Ayer has gone on record saying that this was a completely different movie with no licensed songs in it and a ton more Joker.
Honka honka!
What we are left with is a plot that makes literally no fucking sense, the most obvious needle drops of all time, and an overall infuriating movie that rushes to a sloppy conclusion. Let us go character by character for a moment. Harley Quinn. Probably the only victory this movie has is that Margot Robbie kills it, but in this movie she's forced to play an over-sexualized, annoying, and underdeveloped version of the character. Deadshot. Another pretty decent casting that plays as generically as possible, and he doesn't even do any trick shots besides one. It's really lame. El Diablo. Pretty good, I guess. Good design, at least. Captain Boomerang. Also pretty good, except that he doesn't use any boomerangs. Killer Croc doesn't do anything. Katana doesn't do anything.
Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
Slipknot dies immediately. Rick Flag doesn't do anything.
I'm a soldier, and you're a serial killer who takes credit cards.
Does anyone here do anything? Who needs to be here? Deadshot, I guess, is the one who ends the conflict, so him, maybe? No one else does anything. And while Viola Davis is incredible as Waller, which we learned from a better movie, this movie makes her dumb as rocks, forcing her to be the worst strategist in the world, accidentally letting Enchantress loose, and then having to assemble a team to come and rescue herself. Add that to the fact that our villain is this horrible CGI, wacky, inflatable arm flailing tube man, and a Joker who is really, really bad. Oh my god, that's a joke. I didn't even... That's so good. That's not intentional. That was a joke. I wrote that. But Joker in the movie says really, really bad. You know when you're in a bad mood and your shirt snags on something as you're walking by, and that just makes your bad mood even worse? This movie's kind of like walking down a hallway where your shirt just keeps getting snagged on everything when you're just trying to make it to the fucking kitchen. God, I hate this movie. Where's the Tylenol? Wonder Woman. Okay. Right. Never mind. Hold on. I need to talk about the aftermath of this movie. Ugh. The movie made a decent amount of money, probably because of the marketing, and was having a whole bunch of sequels and spin-offs greenlit pretty much immediately, and none of them ever came to fruition. At this point, things didn't look good for DC. One more bad movie, and DC should probably just pack it up and retry in a couple years. In fact, a good movie right now would probably just make things more complicated.
Now what?
I don't think it's hyperbole to say that no one really expected this movie to be good. After 3 misfires in a row, people didn't expect a movie starring Gal Gadot to be the one to, for better or worse, save the DCEU. Plus, being produced by Snyder, people thought this would have his hands all over it. And while there seems to be some discrepancy about how much or how little he was involved, the movie is pretty much considered a Patty Jenkins product. So, not only was this the first female-led superhero movie in the modern era, so no, that doesn't include Elektra or Catwoman, or any of that, but it was somehow the first Wonder Woman movie that DC had made. For years, DC spewed how audiences weren't ready for a Wonder Woman movie, and her lore was just too confusing for general audiences. And lo and behold, her lore wasn't too confusing, and audiences were ready for Wonder Woman. Come on now, DC. Audiences were already swallowing Thor and Thor 2 at this point. I think they could handle a character with an extremely similar background who happens to be a woman. But I think the lack of expectation on DC's part is what made this movie a success. They seemed to already be writing the universe off, so they weren't ready to chop this up and turn it into something wildly worse. Don't get me wrong, they still put their meaty paws all over it, but not enough to ruin the movie. Namely, they made Patty Jenkins change the ending, which ends up being most people's biggest criticism of the movie. So what do I think of Wonder Woman? Good movie. Nowadays, I think it's pretty popular to bag on Gal Gadot and the Wonder Woman movies, but I don't necessarily think this movie in particular has as many of those things to bag on. Is Gal Gadot a good actress? But she's good for this movie, and they use her quite well. She performs really well as Diana, a fish out of water who doesn't understand or accept women's place in man's world. Also Chris Pine.
He know he giving his money to Megan. He know it's very expensive to date me.
Hollywood's best Chris gives Steve Trevor a warmth and humanity that comic Steve Trevor never had for me. By the way, Steve Trevor under the lasso of truth is one of my favorite line deliveries of all time.
I am a spy!
And they have great chemistry. His ending genuinely makes me feel a lot. It'd be a shame if something came by and ruined that. But yeah, I think this movie is a little underrated. I think it's great. Genuinely, it's above most MCU movies in my opinion. Yes, it's just the first Avenger again. Yes, it's an extremely generic story. Yes, the third act is a bit of a flop. But this movie is just extremely well made, until it's not. Patty Jenkins actually cared about the character, and I think the movie does have a lot of its own iconography, with things like the No Man's Land scene, and the design of Themyscira. So yeah, it's good. The score is great, everyone in the cast holds their own. Yeah, the finale is as generic as it gets, but the emotions I get from Steve's sacrifice salvage it. The reception to this movie was really positive. Average moviegoers liked it. It made a lot of money. I think it's responsible for introducing one of the most popular superheroes of all time to the next generation. I didn't read much Wonder Woman until this movie. Now she's probably one of my most read characters, so I think that says something too. Good work, DC. Let's keep it going. I'm not kidding when I say I think this is the worst movie I've ever seen. God, I just can't choose. I love them both. Alright, so here's the background. Try not to fall in love with me while I explain it. So after BVS, DC pretty much wanted their Avengers movie immediately, and no, they will not wait to see what people think of Batman vs. Superman, thank you very much. People don't like it. What do we do? Ruin it? Yeah, quick, let's ruin it! So, Zack Snyder suffered a family tragedy and stepped down as director in May of 2017. Instead of waiting for him to come back or replacing him with someone he chose, DC placed Joss Whedon in the role to oversee post-production. Obviously, Joss Whedon did the Avengers, that's probably why they picked him, because they wanted an Avenger. But DC sorta lied to everyone and said Zack chose Joss to do this and he was cool with all the decisions he was making for the film. So we got some extremely extensive and expensive reshoots involving the entire cast, which, yes, included Henry Cavill, who couldn't shave his mustache because he was filming a much better movie. That was the right call there, Hank. As we'd find out years later, the reshoots were apparently rife with abusive working conditions, racism, sexism, and all that kind of shows in the final movie. Specifically, Ray Fisher, who was subsequently fired from The Flash, was the most vocal about all this, but Affleck and Godot have both spoken about how much it sucked, and the movie was just a complete hack job. The tone is all over the place. It is ugly as shit when you're trying to meld two completely different styles. The reshot scenes are glaringly obvious. It is all really bad. Let's make the Flash fall on Wonder Woman's chest. Haha, yeah, we all love that. Let's make Aquaman be creepy to Wonder Woman. Haha, yeah.
You're gorgeous and fierce and strong and
Let's add a random Russian family to the finale to up the stakes. Let's remove the cool things Snyder did in favor of having Barry talk about brunch all the time.
Brunch. Like, what is brunch?
It is a disaster. Everything Snyder built to be his unique take on these characters is destroyed. Love it or hate it, that is not a cool thing to do. Cyborg, Aquaman, and the Flash are all introduced here and get no depth. You may say it was an impossible feat to introduce 3 major characters and flesh them out in one movie, but the amount of depth they get in the Snyder Cut compared to this movie is night and day. Let's bring back the Elfman theme and the Williams theme for Batman and Superman. I know it completely clashes with the themes we've been going for these two characters in the past, but it's nostalgia. People will love it. Let's force Cyborg to say booyah, cause he did that in the cartoon. Let's have Superman ask Batman if he bleeds, even though that makes no sense. I could go on and on with every horrible thing that this movie does, and it wouldn't be enough. I will talk about the Snyder Cut in the next video, but this movie literally gets rid of all of the good stuff from that version. It is truly unwatchable. I will not watch this version of the movie again. It is soulless, it feels wrong, nothing makes sense, nothing works. And what do you think the audience reaction was to this? Bad, obviously. No one liked it. Whedon ballooned the budget with his terrible reshoots, so it lost a shit ton of money, and it remains in the mind of nobody. It started the trend of DC movies making no money at the box office. And the biggest side effect of all, the hashtag Release the Snyder Cut campaign. For 3 years, there was no DC tweet, post, or video that was not spammed with hashtag Release the Snyder Cut. The Snyder cult, for all their faults, were extremely persistent, and eventually, yes, they got what they wanted. And for years I made fun of them for being so obsessed, and yeah, they were weirdly obsessed, but hey, this cut of Justice League is immoral, and I'm glad that Zack's version is out there for everyone to see. This era of DC movies was no fun for anyone really. DC fans got fucked, Snyder fans got fucked, movie fans got fucked. But some good came out of it. Well, one good came out of it. And in the next video, I'll talk a little more about what DC decided to pivot to try and recapture an audience. Yeah, I can't talk about 16 movies and a TV show in one video, so tune in next time for what I am dubbing the Hamadaverse era. Everything from Aquaman up to and including the Suicide Squad. So stay tuned, and let me know down in the comments what you think of the 5 movies I just talked about.